What if after decades of cinema defining masculinity, the tough guys, the warriors, there was a film that stripped away these assumptions and exposed the raw complexities of the male condition? Claire Denise's Beau Travail does just that, with an unconventional structure and near wordless storytelling. The film dismantles the rigid expectations of masculinity, presenting it not as something innate, but as something fragile, performed, and ultimately unsustainable. Before the gritty realism of the 1970s, Hollywood reinforced a polished, idealised version of masculinity, strong, stoic images that served more than just cultural appeal, but aligned with political and ideological forces of the time. The Hays Code, enforced in the early 1930s with government backing, censored alternative depictions of men, ensuring cinema upheld traditional power structures. But as censorship weakened and societal norms shifted, masculinity in cinema began to unravel. Sociologist R.W. Cornell's theory of multiple masculinities revealed a hierarchy of power. Masculinity not equivalent to men, but concerned the position of men in a gender order, where masculinities are multiple, with internal complexities and even contradictions, and where hegemonic masculinity dominated over complicit, marginalised and subordinate masculinities. This shift fueled a new cinematic movement, one that explored men in crisis, grappling with lost dominance, no longer presenting men as unwavering heroes, but as fractured, conflicted figures. This is the cinematic landscape into which Beau Travail emerges, a film that does not just depict masculinity, but deconstructs it entirely. At first glance, it appears to reinforce hegemonic masculinity, following a unit of French Foreign Legionnaires, an institution built on rigid discipline and physical endurance. But Denise does not depict this world through the traditional military lens. Instead, she emphasises masculinity as performance, shaped through repetition, order and control. Morning drills in the desert showcase synchronised movements that strip individuality away. The marching sequences elevate their bodies to mythic status, reinforcing the Legion as a system of total control. Yet cracks in this order begin to emerge. Galloup's personal rituals, such as ironing his uniform, are filmed in tight, precise close-ups, transforming them into almost religious acts of self-discipline. The sound design heightens these movements, emphasising the crispiness of fabric, the rhythm of boots against the floor, yet small, potent symbols of control. But there are moments where Denise subtly undermines this rigidity. The dancing sequences, both in the club and later in Galloup's isolated breakdown, offer glimpses of freedom. The soldiers' movements suggest an attempt to break from their strict roles, but their uniforms remain, serving as a constant reminder that they are still confined with the structure of the Legion, unable to fully escape its grip. Through these sequences, Denise presents masculinity not as an innate, but as something enforced, maintained, and ultimately unsustainable. The male body, disciplined and controlled, becomes both a site of power and prison. But beneath the film's focus on discipline lies a deeper, more unsettling tension, though: the repression of desire and vulnerability. The Legion is a homosocial space where physical intimacy exists, but emotional expression is strictly policed. This tension is most evident in Galloup's fixation on a recruit called Syntaine. Denise films Galloup watching him from a distance, isolating him in a shallow focus, his face barely registering emotion. Yet these lingering close-ups suggest more than just resentment. Galloup's frustration is not purely hierarchical, it is personal, internal and inexpressible. This repression finally manifests in violence when Galloup accuses Syntaine of subordination. The film's aesthetic shifts, tight, erratic close-up preludes to their fight, as if aggression is the only acceptable outlet for emotion. Even later, with small gestures such as when Syntaine offers his canteen to another soldier, express the fragility of masculinity. Denise frames it with a lingering intimacy, turning this simple act into a point of rupture, in where power and dominance dictate interactions, and kindness becomes a source of conflict. Galloup's ultimate act, exiling Syntaine to the deserts, is not just about authority. It is an attempt to erase his own internal contradictions, to rid himself of an attraction or resentment he cannot articulate. As Saint-Ain stumbles through the vast, empty landscape, wide, distant shots render him small and powerless, visually mirroring the emotional isolation at the core of Galoup's masculinity. Through these sequences, Denise criticizes hegemonic masculinity as an ideology that demands emotional suppression, where even acts of kindness become threats and where masculinity's greatest enemy is itself. Verging the end of the film, masculinity itself collapses. After his dismissal from the Legion for his irresponsible leadership, Galoup methodically makes his bed and then, lying down, a gun in his hand. This rigid, almost ceremonial act reflects his continued adherence to military discipline, yet outside the Legion it is rendered meaningless. The bed, once a site of rest, now resembles a deathbed, reinforcing his isolation. The gun suggests both latent violence and existential despair, highlighting the fragility of his identity. Stripped of authority, Galoup clings to the rituals that once defined him, yet they no longer provide structure, only emptiness. Then Denise delivers the final, most iconic moment. Galoup's erratic dance, with rigid military composure shattered. The camera work, the neon lights, transforms this moment into something almost surreal. Is this dance a moment of liberation, or the final breakdown of a man without anything to lose? Denise leaves this question open-ended. Without the structure that defines him, Galoup is nothing. Beau, Travail is not just a film about masculinity, it is a deconstruction of it. Denise challenges the idea that men must be strong, controlled, and dominant, instead expressing masculinity as something fragile, repressed, and performative. Through hypnotic cinematography, unconventional storytelling, and a rejection of traditional exposition, Beau, Travail creates an experience that forces the audience to see masculinity differently, not as an inherent trait, but as a role that must be constantly upheld and ultimately one that can fall apart.